All right, let's go ahead and call this meeting of the Isani City Council to order. If we can all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Doing roll call, we have all council members present. Do we have any public comment this evening? Hearing none, I'll look for a motion to adopt the agenda. No modifications tonight, right?
Oh, go ahead.
Yep, I've got a motion from Councilman Lundin
Second.
and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0.
I just thought you were gonna ask if there was any changes.
Oh, I did, yeah.
I jumped the gun.
And then moving on to proclamations here and certificate awards. We have some years of service awards. So I don't know if we have everybody here for this, but you tell me if you want pictures or anything like that. And
Good evening, Mayor. I think that we could read through all the years of
Okay.
service awards, and then we can do one picture at the end for who's present.
that sounds good to me. So we have Jordan Rapp, who's with Public Works. These are all 5-year folks here. We have Jaden Strand, the city clerk, and we have Greg Foskey from the liquor store, all at 5 years. We have 10 years for Josie Wood, our city administrator, and 10 years for our police chief, Travis Myers. We've got 15 years for Anna Wegworth, who's our receptionist here at City Hall, and 20 years for Matt Sylvester, our Public Works Director. So congratulations to all those that are reaching milestones here at the city. So we appreciate your service. So. Yeah, let's see, let's sort these out here.
Matt, you're older than me around here.
There's Jaden. Travis. Thank you. Josie. And Matt. 20 years, that's a long time.
You've seen some
I was
stuff.
surprised when I seen that. I didn't know he'd been here 20
Yeah.
years.
Well, he was a grunt.
10 years is a long time.
He was a grunt for quite a few.
Jimmy, do you want to stand up there?
Sure, yeah.
That's okay.
Hold on, we should make everyone sure everyone's back the right side up. Okay, yeah. It'll be like the one that's upside down, right?
Yes, Mom, we'll check to make sure they're the right way up.
They'd be mine. Yeah, upside down or something.
All right. So next we have Remembering Fallen Officer Marshal Frank Dolan. Travis, I'll turn this over to you.
I'll just read his ODP memorial. Marshal Frank Dolan was shot and killed when he interrupted a burglary at a potato warehouse. He was shot twice during the exchange of gunfire with the suspects. He succumbed to his wounds 2 days later. One of the suspects was also shot and wounded. 2 men were arrested 4 months later and charged with Marshal Dolan's murder. Both were wanted for several robberies in neighboring counties and the murder of a cashier during a bank robbery in Wheelock, North Dakota that occurred November 12th of 1926. On May 14th, 1927, both were convicted of his murder and sentenced to life in prison. One was paroled in January of 1949. The other suspect was transferred to St. Peter's Insane Asylum, where on June 8th, 1936, he escaped with 15 other inmates. The 15 other inmates were either killed or recaptured, including the leader of the escapees, who was a member of the Barker Capris gang, who shot and killed on February 2nd, 1937. Marshall Dolan's killer was one of 8 men killed in a train accident in San Bernardino, California. Marshall Dolan has served the Sandy Police Department for 1 year and survived by his wife and stepson. So the incident date was December 21st, 1926. And then he died 2 days after that.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about. I mean, that two lives changed there for sure with his wife and his son, and you know, it's no different than it is today. I mean, you guys go out and put your lives on the line, and we all owe you a debt of gratitude for what you do every day. So, and I think for those of you that don't know, Dolan Avenue is named after Frank Dolan. So, yeah, it's always. I think we do this just about every year. We kind of remember and
Every
honor
December,
his
around
service.
that
and-
anniversary date, yep.
Yeah. So, thank you, Travis, and thank you for all of our police department and the work that they do, so. Moving on to the city council minutes, we've got the city council budget work session meeting minutes from November 21st. We've got the committee of the whole meeting minutes from November 21st, and we've got the city council meeting minutes from November 21st as well. I did see one change on there, on the committee of the whole meeting minutes. We had said that the splash pad discussion was gonna be moved to cow, but it was actually moved to tonight, right? So,
We will, thank you, Mayor and Council. We will have that on discussion tonight as part of approving or not approving the bathrooms. We do feel that it is important to have that out, all as a collective decision or collective conversation this
Right.
evening.
yeah. So I just was saying in the meeting minutes, it said it was moving to cow, but if somebody was to look for that. So that's all I was saying, is I just noticed that we needed to change that to this meeting so that people can follow that if they're looking through back
Thank you. We'll make
in the
that change.
future. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes from those 3 meetings from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. For announcements, we've got our committee of the whole meeting coming up on Tuesday, December 19th at 5 p.m. We've got our planning commission meeting that same night at 6 p.m. Our city council meeting will be also on the 19th at 7 p.m. And the city offices will be closed Monday, December 25th and Tuesday, the 26th, in observance of Christmas. They'll also be closed on Monday, January 1st, in observance of New Year's. Do we have any council committee reports? I've actually got one this time. I attended our community ed meeting just last week it was. So they've got their new information packets that'll be coming out about all the programs that they have coming up this round. And they're really working on trying to get the word out that they have a lot of programs and a lot of activities for teens and adults. It's not just little kid stuff in there. And so that's really a big focus for them. They also shared a lot of information about their volunteer coordinators, and I just had to share this because I was so amazed at how many people help out at the schools. They have 3 gals that do all of the coordination for volunteers that, I mean, they do all sorts of stuff, but I mean, they're helping teachers and helping with, you know, decorating for events and all sorts of things. But those 3 gals for all the buildings in the school district, and they helped last year with organizing over 1,200 different volunteers to help out with things. So that was pretty neat to hear about how many people would come together to help support what's going on and help out with the schools, so. All right, moving on to business item K1. This is the big one. This is the Super Bowl for taxes and for Mike here, so he's been working all year just to get ready for these next few minutes.
There ain't no minutes with him.
Next few hours.
No pressure. All right, so this is the meeting where we adopt the final budget and levy. Per state statute, we hold this meeting. Department of Revenue provides the following guidance. 1, by statute, final levy cannot be higher than the preliminary levy. We must discuss the budget and proposed property tax, and we must allow for public comment and questions. That ends up being at the discretion of the presiding officer. What is a reasonable amount of time, should there be questions or comments? The Department of Revenue does not give that type of guidance. So I'll give a little background. I've got at least one council member who's heard me say this 1,000 times, probably could recite a good chunk of this. But for anyone watching on Facebook or YouTube, and for our newer council members, I'll go through kind of the basics, kind of the background, the higher level stuff, and then toward the end, then we'll get into the, where's the tax rate, where is the levy, those types of things. Fiscal management, we'll go through how we manage the components of the municipal budget, what kind of associated timelines we consider, and I'm going through this process, which really does take solid 6 to 8 months. And in the end, we want to see the tax rate changing in small and steady increments, right? We want to be able to, what you want to avoid is the wild ups and the wild downs, right? If you're going to go down, make it sustainable, and if you have to go up, make it minimal. Some of the components of the municipal budget, the one probably most people are most familiar with would be the operating budget, right? This is operating expenses, operating revenues. Your revenues from that are going to be in the general fund levy, and in some cases rates are tied to the fee schedule. On expenses, I'm looking at all kinds of things, 3-year averages, 5-year averages, last year actual. For some instances, if we're talking about utilities or phone or internet, that kind of stuff, I really only care about the last 6 months. It doesn't really help at all to know what it was 3 years ago. And as far as competency, that's not hard, right? I mean, that's doing some basic research and working through that stuff. Next category would be intergovernmental revenues and expenses. This is the classic example here in Minnesota is LGA, right? That'd be a revenue, but you might also have something like grants. Expenses, this is going to be based on regulations, legislation, and in the end, you're going to be competent in that because there's going to be a state or federal agency that will compel you to be compliant and competent. Then we have capital projects. This would be the type of stuff that is engineered, right? That I've got streets, I've got buildings, those kinds of things. Might be levy, might be rates. In there, you're looking at a 10 to 20-year horizon, and most of the time, a city is going to be competent at this because they're going to pay an engineer to be competent. The last part is probably the most important, and that is the capital maintenance and replace it. This is going to be funded in a similar way as capital projects. You're going to have a 20-year horizon. This is what we look at. Now, of course, as council knows, I'm looking at this 35, 40 years out, just to make sure that we're keeping an eye on things and that we see any difficulties coming way in advance, and that if we need to make a correction because we're short 8 million, we can do that slowly over time or readjust the plan accordingly. And we have done that recently with our street plan. To my mind, that last one is where the largest available competitive advantage is. That is what most cities do not do well. That is what we do well. Property tax calculation. If you've heard me give my budget speeches before, I am really, really big on tax rate and not super excited about talking about the levy. Basically, a couple of reasons is one, levy's gonna go up over time. It's gonna make it very difficult to understand year over year, decade to decade, where do you really sit? A tax rate provides a way better comparison between cities and between years. You have a much better understanding of the fiscal state of a city looking at its tax rate. Not to say that you aren't going to find lots of people talk about the levy. You're definitely going to hear it on the radio, see it in the newspaper, and I can't tell you how bonkers that drives me. Saying that Minneapolis's levy goes up 6% just absolutely tells you nothing, and it drives me bonkers. But basics of the tax rate is just your levy divided by tax capacity, and in the end, tax capacity is a calculation that comes from market value. If you want to think of it simple, it is levy divided by market value. And property value, right? Any individual homeowner or business owner times tax rate, that's your property tax. That's why we care so much about tax rate. that actually gives us useful information. This, can't even see this. This is an older statement, but they're substantively the same, right? And we put this up because for a lot of people, they will say, all right, I've got step number 2, proposed tax, $2734. Why is the city taxing me $2,734? And these are questions that I've had before, and this is when I have to kind of point them toward the left-hand side, right, where it breaks down. This is the amount that is attributable to the county. This is the amount that is attributed to the city. This is the amount that goes to the school district. And that matters, right? We have control over our levy, our tax rate, but we don't get say in county, school district, East Central Regional Development Commission. We don't have say in that. So just being aware of how that is set up is important. Budget options to consider. This is something that, one thing you can do is delay a street project, right? You want to find a little money, delay a street project. This has never been my recommendation. That was definitely what I inherited. We had a lot of projects identified in 2010, put on paper in 2012, and absolutely nothing happened with them. We are very close now to getting out from under that list and moving on to new projects that had not been identified yet in 2010. So that's good. Another item, delay, eliminate capital maintenance and replacement items. This year's budget, we did do a little bit of that. We cleared out 2024 and then pulled some items back in. We pulled the plow truck back in, grader back in, salt shed, a couple squads, and then left the rest to wait till 2025. Another option, reduce operating expenditures. That can be a little more difficult. You have to heat buildings. A lot of times you're going to have contracts that you're already bound to, and so that can place some hurdles on that. This is budget summary. This is definitely not anywhere near as detailed as what I put together and what I look at with the council throughout our work sessions. But this is what we approved in September, right? This is what that looks like. This is general fund revenues, general fund expenditures, and we were looking at a contribution to fund balance of a little more than $200,000. And some things have changed since then, and we will definitely get into that. Budget summary. We have other budgeted funds. It's not just the general fund, right? We also take care of EDA, street construction, pavement management, water fund, sewer fund, stormwater, municipal liquor, the 4 enterprise funds. We've got, city technology is the capital fund, 614, and capital improvement listed at the bottom is Fund 920. That is where all of the capital maintenance and replacement items that would otherwise be for the general fund are housed. Fiscal management, right? We've talked about a good chunk of this, operating revenues and expenditures. Yeah, this is how we pay snowplow drivers. This is how we pay PD, basic stuff like that. Capital projects, this is really an ongoing thing, right? You gotta identify and fund on a consistent annual basis. It's not just enough to put it on paper once, it's gotta be revisited repeatedly. Our 20-year capital improvement plan is large, and it's supposed to be. It is a little bit much to update every year. The first draft took 2 years to put together, so I generally update in categories every 5th year. If I see a need prior, we will certainly step in and take care of that, but that's generally how that goes. And what we're doing here is trying to levy a consistent amount for those capital projects so that we can spend what we need to spend in the years we need to spend, but be able to be consistent in the amount of money that we collect in any given year. And 2028 is a good example. 2028, we're scheduled for nearly 1.4 million in expenses, but we're only going to levy 373,000. Right, that's the wisdom in doing it that way. Other issue is whenever we can, and this has been a long-running goal of the council, is let's avoid issuing debt. When I got here, it was sort of a, if I issued, $1 million in bonds, you could bet on good $300,000 in interest and issuance costs. Now it's gotten closer to $400,000, to issue $1 million. And it seems like a great deal when interest rates are 3%, but unfortunately, those bond issues are structured a lot like your home mortgage. The amortization schedule is heavily not in your favor, and even though the interest rate is low, you still do pay a lot in interest. And we have been avoiding that for any levy debt, and the plan is to continue to do so, and right now I don't see anything in the future that is going to compel us to issue levy debt, and that is a big deal. In the end, when you think about that, that's basically buy three projects, get one free. That's good stuff. Capital maintenance and replacement, just like capital projects, right? You gotta look at this every year, and again, let's take in a consistent amount of money each year over time, small increases, 3% is your target, but this allows us to be able to have $885,000 in expenses in 2024, but only need to levy $360, and know that we still have the cash for this. This is just good planning, right? And again, we present 20 years, but we're looking out 40 years, and the intent here is that everything is listed, from squad cars and snow plows to tuck pointing brickwork to replacing windows. Things that aren't going to show up on the schedule for another 40 or 60 years are still listed. They do have a place. Considerations in setting the levy, right? We care a lot about what do we have on our capital plan, so long as we understand that to be complete and we've identified all our needs. It's really simple math to be able to pull those numbers forward and understand where we are going to get to on a levy, add our capital improvement levy, our street construction levy, EDA levy, general fund levy, add them up. It's pretty straightforward. We also have to consider when you're setting the levy is fund balance, right? This is one of our 3 primary goals, is to build fund balance. And we've got a repayment to the liquor fund from 2018 improvements, but finding a way to continue to get some more money into the bank and be able to have that rainy day fund so that if things go sideways, you have at least some options. This is a proposed levy, 2024 on the left-hand side there, and then to the right, 2023. We see the percent change from prior, and then on the far right, the dollars, right? The actual dollar changes. Again, this is what was approved as the preliminary. We can certainly go lower, but we cannot go higher. So this is just a 1.41% increase. Levy history. This is a good chunk of why I'm not a super big fan of spending a ton of time looking at the levy. Is for the levy's going to go up over time for the same reason that a gallon of milk costs more over time. It just is. Makes it very difficult to compare year to year. It makes it virtually impossible to compare city to city. So I added this in last year. I'm going to keep this in because even though I know I got some council members that fully understand this, I think we got some residents and business owners that might be interested in this. This is kind of what I'm thinking about in my head when I say we should spend time talking about tax rate, not so much time talking about the levy. If I've got City A, and mind you, this is real data from 2022, and one of these is actually my house. If I got City A and City B, one's got $152,000 levy, one's got $8.6 million. I say, which city do you want to live in? First thought, that limited information, yeah, I want 152. The tax has got to be less, right? Then if I tell you City A has a tax rate of nearly 300%, but City B, tax rate of 34%. Okay, so now that seems like maybe I should have picked City B, right? Well, if I tell you in City A, that house is worth $79,000, and in City B, that house is $350,000, that makes a person wonder. Oh, taxes on $350 have got to be more, right, than $79,000. That $79,000 is just such a small amount. Well, City B, $1,200 in city tax. City A, nearly $1,500 in city tax. Now, I picked the one for City A that's actually in Hanley Falls, and I used to live out in that area and picked a house that I felt was commensurate with the house that I'm living in, City B, in Otsego currently. But that's, if you spend the time looking at the levy, you are going to get misled eventually. Tax rate will give you considerably more information. So, proposed tax rate. Again, this is what we approved in, for the preliminary, a drop of nearly 9% from the prior year, and nearly 28% below the prior 15-year average. 8.9% was a target that the council had put forth prior. We understood from data from the county that the average existing residential home rose by an average of 8.8%. So we thought, well, let's clear that. Let's get past that point and see if we can't get some people to have taxes that either go down or at least stay the same. And tax rate history. This is kind of a fun one, right? There was a clear trend on the first half of that graph and a pretty clear trend on the second half of that graph. I like that it's going down. I like that it's either going down every year or we're being consistent, right? That when we move that down, we have done the planning necessary to know that what we're moving it down to is sustainable.
Mike, if I could interrupt you for a
Yeah.
sec, what year did you start working here?
June 5th of 2017. So 2018 would have been my first
Something
budget.
kind of lines up there with that trend, doesn't it?
Well,
All right, continue.
I did my research before I came. I understood what I was walking into. How about that? This is, excuse me, levy tax rate history. It's a lot of information, and if there is anybody, council members, residents, business owners, anybody wants to see this information in detail, PDF, Excel, I don't care what format you ask. Yes, I would love to give it to you. I want people to look at this stuff. Pretty straightforward. Market value at the top. You can see a little bit of the adjustments that we end up getting to get to that tax capacity. That's actually the number you calculate against, but fundamentally it's based on estimated or on market value. Then in the middle section we've got our levies. Understand that the two levies that are notated 931, 2021 tax abatement bond, and then the 2014B bond, those sum together to equal the debt service levy at the bottom. So you're not actually adding all of the numbers, you're adding all of the bolded numbers to arrive at that. And then after that, yeah, we see percent change from prior, dollar change from prior, and at the bottom we see the certified tax rate. That is after the fact, when all of the chips have fallen, anybody contesting a property value, any of those kinds of things, county will send that out and say, this is the definitive final tax rate. And I show 3 decimal points. Trust me, county goes quite a number of decimal points farther out than that. And then at the very bottom, we see our percent change from prior, right? If we go back, 2009 to 2015, yeah, there's kind of a lot of ups and downs, and it's a little bit all over. And we start to steady out there when we get to that 2017-18 time range. And we start to see a little different trajectory. Then this is what I always like to end on. Our competitive metric. I usually, in my budget talks, I usually spend a little more time talking about that we are competing against other cities. And in my opinion, I don't know that it really matters if anybody thinks we are or not. We just are. We're competing for new residents. We're competing to retain residents. We're competing for new businesses, and we're competing to retain businesses. And it's all well and good to have planned out the budget as thoroughly as you can. It's all well and good to have talked about being competitive, but we need to actually hold ourselves accountable and say, are we doing this against our peers or are we not? And so I did this year. I was able to pull some prelim data for 2024, so I stuck that in over on the right-hand side. But otherwise, if we look at tax rates from 2017, when I got here, to 2023, which is the last year that we have a certified tax rate that's in the books, we've done fairly well. We're down 38% and change, and that is top of the class. We've got a couple other cities there, East Bethel and North Branch have also done well, bringing their tax rate down by more than 30%, but we're doing pretty good. It's also interesting that if you kind of skip to that far right side, North Branch, at least based on their preliminary work, looks to be reversing course a little bit. So that if I compare that 2024 prelim rate on the far right to the 2017 number on the far left, that's where we see. So based on our preliminary, in this, 7-year span, yeah, we're talking about going down more than 44%. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Apples to apples, if I take the tax rate for 1 year, set it against your property values, yeah, we're talking about people paying that much less as a percent than they would have otherwise if we had just left the tax rate at 85.933. That's a big deal. So we'll keep putting this up every year. We'll keep adding years to it, and we'll see if we can't continue to compete. That is what I have for the PowerPoint presentation. Before I go on to anything else, does anybody have questions, comments? Maybe somebody behind me is chomping at the bit. That's about as big as I can make that. Now, what is on the screen is on the table behind me. Council members have a copy of this. This is that larger workbook, levy tax rate history, condensed down. What do we see on the far left column? It's 2023. This is what's in the books. Then we have in column X, prelim 2024, that is what we approved, right? So we see, based on the market value numbers we had at the time, those are the levy amounts in bold that we arrived at. We see the percent change in the levy is 1.4%. That's about $52,000 more. I added a section for this. It was not on the prior presentation there. For contribution to fund balance. We approved a budget that gave us about $120,000 toward basically the rainy day fund, right? And then at the bottom, we see that calculated out, that is a decrease to the tax rate of nearly 9%. Next column, Y, is rev expense update. This is not one that was approved, shared with the council at a work session, but this is what reflects we had some staff leave, new ones get hired. Got to fix their positions, adjust those pay, make that stuff correct. Health insurance renewal, what people elected for health insurance. Those types of updates are reflected in column Y. Basically, everything would otherwise look the same there, except the contribution to fund balance went up to $202,000. Now, Friday, of course, because it was after we published the packet, but I guess this is the boat we're in, so it's okay. On Friday, we got updated market value numbers. Now, taking what the council has already approved at the for the preliminary budget and preliminary levy, if I just put in the updated market value numbers from the county, we see in column Z that we now have $202,000 to contribution to fund balance. That component just kind of sits there. But because market value has now gone up based on those revised numbers, and our levy is the same because that's what we approved preliminarily, the tax rate now is down to 47.17, and a drop of nearly 10.5%. I did also have, Mayor did ask me to throw a couple other options up for the council to consider. And this was, you know, I suppose it was brought up at a meeting nonetheless, but column double A, zero levy increase is what that is abbreviated to mean. So in that scenario, what I've done is simply take $51,951 off of the contribution to fund balance and reduce the levy. So in that scenario, the levy increase by percent is 0, the levy increase by dollar is 0, and we end up with a tax rate of 46.5%, because the levy has gone down, market value is what it is, and that is then a decrease in the tax rate of 11.7%. Mayor Gordon also then said, well, all right, let's at least see what does it look like if we don't put any money toward fund balance. What if we just say, all right, all of it is going to help reduce the levy? In that scenario, the contribution to fund balance becomes 0. The levy ends up going down 4% and about $150,000 total. Tax rate drops to 44.6 and is a 15.3% drop from 2023. Now, what's in the packet for resolutions is based on what we had for preliminary, right? And those resolutions are drafted also then before I had the updated market value information as well. So the task to the council is, what do you guys want to do?
Well, thank you, Mike. Appreciate all the work that you've done all year long to get ready for this, and I've asked Mike to probably look at 30, 40 scenarios of different options. I mean,
Something like that.
it's a lot, yeah. So,
All of which have been archived.
and he's been patient with me, and Josie's sat in on most of those meetings, and she's been patient with me as well, so. So if you guys don't mind, I just wanted to just kind of lay out sort of where I think we should try to attempt to be, and just, if you have any questions, just kind of stop me and let me know. But I'll just start by saying that I think that we should go with the no fund balance contribution and the negative 15.31% drop in the tax rate. And let me tell you a little bit of the backstory on that, and when you see that contribution to fund balance at 0, there's another factor that we'll kind of mention that will actually contribute, hopefully, potentially would contribute to that we'll talk about here in a minute. So, so don't think that I haven't thought about that as an issue there, you know what I mean? So, so with that rise in the market value of the 13.35%, you know, you're getting, you know, growth in a couple of different ways. You're getting it in the value of each home is going up, you know, more than what we probably expected, but we've also grown more. We've added new homes, you know, that type of thing. So, but when we were looking today, I sat down with Mike and Josie for quite some time, and we had looked at several different properties, and a lot of them, you know, over like on kind of the southwest side of town, like Nina Street and Marion, and sort of that area. You guys are familiar with that. A lot of them were seeing more like a 14% increase in their value of their property, and you know, some of them are, you know, losing the homestead credit as well, or parts of it and stuff like that. So you know, when we were looking at that, I thought, well, you know, our goal originally with that 8.97 was to say, if the average home is going up, you know, 8.8%, like Mike mentioned, we want to make sure that at the very least, they're not seeing an increase. And then if their home is going up less than that, they're going to see an actual, you know, decrease in dollar amount that they're paying, right? So that was our goal, and we, you know, did our preliminary budget, and we reached that, no problem. And so then when we were talking, you know, today with this new information, we started looking at, you know, some other different options, and we had already talked, you know, Steve and I remember we discussed that at the last budget workshop was, you know, if we want to get that levy down to 0, you know, moving that 52,000 over. And so that was part of that conversation already that we were planning on doing, was the 0 levy 2024 was kind of at our last budget meeting was the plan. But then hearing that we had gone up that much on our market value, and knowing that you've got several homes, many homes, that are going up more than what we expected, You know, what can we do about that? And so when you're talking, you know, the contribution to fund balance, and being able to use that to kind of offset that and get to where we need to get to reach that goal, typically, like in 2022, let's say, the fund balance that was actually budgeted for in 2022 was 0. But by the end of the year, we contributed 244,000 to fund balance. So we still ended up contributing, because when Mike's estimating these things, I mean, he's obviously figuring conservatively, and he figures on the high side of stuff, and so, you know, the goal is to make sure that we don't run out of money, right? So you wanna figure a little bit higher. So that's where that 244,000, that was basically a surplus on the budget, and then was contributed to fund balance. So there was 0 budgeted for it, though, when we were talking about budgeting 150.
Mike, I have a question quick, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Is that typical that you see a surplus that's put into the fund balance versus, is that typical for our city, or was that an anomaly that year?
There, you mean the final outcome, right? Where
Yes.
you budget for nothing?
Yes,
In my experience, yes. That
That's
is,
typical?
that is.
fairly? Okay.
And it's, I don't know how often it happens for other cities, but when I'm going through this, basically how this is working out is that I can identify revenues within a particular range, I can identify expenditures within a particular range, but what I need to have happen is I need to know that my numbers are gonna be inside that range, right? And knowing no budget is ever perfect, no budget, yeah, if we actually land exactly as we budget, we should all go buy lottery tickets ASAP, because that ain't never gonna happen. But I need those revenues to be a little bit lower on that margin, and I need those expenses to be a little bit higher on that margin. And then to the extent that we have good department heads that actually care and actually act like they're spending their own money, things work out, right? They might say, hey, that tool chest is $900, put that in the budget, but then comes time to actually buy that tool chest, and they can find it on sale on Black Friday for $600, that's what they do. Well, those little things add up, and it is not uncommon to pick up, you know, 125, 175, 200,000. That's not uncommon. It's not a guarantee, and it's not going to be every year, but that has been a trend for some time.
Okay, do you have any idea where we're headed this year with that? I mean, maybe you don't know because we still have another month.
You're saying for 2023?
Yeah, I'm just curious if.
Yeah, that's what we looked at, tried to find the most recent numbers that we could know
Yeah,
for
and
sure, but.
And in all honesty, I'm still way behind from
that's
having
fine.
lost staff in July. I'm
Yep, that's
getting
fine.
closer to getting caught up, but
Yep,
I'm still working through September, unfortunately.
so there's usually some cushion there, so that's,
That would be generally it, right? I mean, all the department heads know that the intent is you got to stay under budget.
yep,
And, you know, if you stay under $1, okay, that's $1, but $1 over and over and over starts to add up. And if you can be under 300 or 3,000, like this adds up, adds up, adds up. And part of how that works is that, you know, what I do, and the next time we go around and meet with the department heads, I don't say, oh, well, you didn't spend your entire budget, I'm slashing that thing. No, they get to make the case that this is the right number each year. And because they get to make the case that this is the right number, regardless of what happened the prior year, they feel a lot more comfortable that they don't need to just spend money just to spend money. And I know cities that do that. And that's not a super great idea.
sure,
You end up with department heads that spend just for the sake of spending.
Yep.
So,
thank you.
So let me kind of keep going with that same, because you're probably wondering, well, what about 2021 and 2020, aren't you?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Okay, let me tell you. So 2021, we budgeted 85,000 for the contribution to fund balance, and we ended up with 209, so it was 124,000 more that we were able to contribute. 2020, I think it was kind of negative, sort of, actually, what was budgeted for fund balance, but I don't know, there was some 75,000 that was, but anyway, it ended up basically being 175,000 of a surplus at the end that was contributed to fund balance. So that's recent history of, you know, when, even though you don't have that money budgeted for fund balance, you're still collecting it, and you're still gonna end up putting it there when the time comes, so. So that was one thought, that we could still use that money to get to where we need to get to make sure that these people that are seeing, you know, 14% increases, they're not seeing an actual increase on their tax bill, or maybe see a slight decrease, and anybody below that, which is still a lot of people would see an actual dollar decrease, so.
That's great information.
Mm-hmm.
That's good digging.
Yeah. And then, you know, I mean, I definitely want to make sure that we're saving for a rainy day, right? And I know Jeff had mentioned to me before about, you know, two people that are facing foreclosure and, you know, are in tough spots. And I think, you know, when you've got year-over-year values of these houses going up, and you've got inflation out of control, and you've got some of these things, I mean, I think you have to kind of start to wonder, well, is now a rainy day too? So I don't know, but I mean, you've got that fund balance that should have a surplus, or hopefully would have a surplus if it's like years past, that we would have, and we have the opportunity to give some real, you know, to lessen the burden on the residents. You know, and then I think there is a conversation that we will be having here at EDA. I don't know if you guys saw that. We can't spend a whole lot of time chatting about that here right now because it's not what we're talking about, but there's a sale of property that potentially could bring in like $158,000, and that money would be contributed to fund balance. So, so that, like I said, it says zero, but if hopefully things go as it looks like they will in this next meeting at the EDA, and we would actually have $158,000 there that could be contributed. So, so that's why it says zero, but it won't end up being zero, is my point. And I think that's really where we probably need to be. You know, and the thing about it too is it's not like we've just decided that, okay, we're picking this number out of thin air. I mean, we've really worked hard to make sure that years coming down the road are gonna be able to maintain this rate and that we're not gonna have issues. I think there's 1 year, maybe 3 years from now that it's showing it's gonna drop another percent, and then go up 2.4 or something like that. And
That's
we can,
That's 1 year where we have currently, are planning to hire. And so when
Yeah.
you've got that extra 150 with wages and benefits, that, yeah, it takes a little time to absorb that.
right, and so, you know, that's 2 years from now. I mean, we should be able to adjust to still maintain the rate 2 years from now. I mean, there'll be other things that'll change, and we'll be able to adjust for that. But I mean, even looking out several years into the future, we're able to maintain this rate without issue, and I think it's the right move. I think it'd be huge for our residents to feel that relief, and it's huge to see that we could still contribute to fund balance, so we're still saving for a rainy day, and we're still prepared for the future. So that's why I would argue that we should go ahead and go with that the no fund balance contribution is what we're calling it, but.
So I have a question. I'm not exactly sure on, there was a state grant that was given to us for public safety. How much was that amount on that?
The 307,000
Yes.
and change?
And now, so we can't use that on things that are budgeted for, correct? Or what are the rules on that?
I'll let the chief speak on that.
Yeah, there's some of that. I mean, we had a lot to do with that committee, when we watched that committee and talked to some of the legislators on that committee. So if you look at the legislative intent, I know the one that we talked to, legislative intent is to enhance law enforcement across the state of Minnesota. I mean, that's or public safety across the state of Minnesota. That's the intent behind it. And he was adamant that that's the intent behind it, to lower taxes. That's what the LGA funds are for. And that's why they were trying to throw it into a different fund. So that was the intent behind it. But that's kind of that, you can't supplant budgeted items with monies from grants. And that's kind of the supplanting piece of the puzzle. As far as, you know, taking $200,000 out of our budget next year and plugging that in there, that's the issue. You can't supplant that. And then that doesn't obviously accomplish that legislative intent behind the money either, you know, because you didn't enhance anything, which is why you can't supplant it. You know, that's why grants are, to actually you give you a grant for something, you're supposed to actually do something with it, not just take something else away.
Could we unbudget a squad car right
Yes.
now?
That's kind of where I was going with that. You know, you unbudget one and you use some of that money towards saving tax money, because at the end of the day, that money that they're giving back to us is all paid by our taxpayers. So, I mean, taxpayers aren't gonna care. if you-
Understood.
Yeah.
The advice I would give on that is regardless of the legislative intent, lowering taxes on one-time money will put you in a bind the following year. Because
So-
there's zero chance that that money is coming back again next year.
Right. So, I guess I see it as, well, maybe we could, if we unbudgeted for a squad and then paid, took that 70,000, part of that grant that we're getting and paid for the squad and still got it, but it's not in our budget. You could take that 70,000, just throw it in the fund balance or something more, not to say that PD or fire doesn't need it, but at the same time,
I think we have plenty of items for PD that are in future plans. that-
And I was gonna say that maybe Travis, if you wanna maybe mention some of the things that, that 307,000 is not a lot of money and doesn't go that far. So, I mean, maybe you could kinda mention some of the things that you've got planned that,
yeah, I just don't want it to go into like what Mike was just saying, sometimes you have the money and if you don't spend it, it goes away, and I don't want that mindset
I don't
going
think
in.
there was any sunset on that when you had to spend that money, right?
I need to put it in a separate fund to be able to segregate it.
Okay.
Because if the state auditor's office ever comes in, or the state auditor's office doesn't come in, they simply provide guidance to contracted auditors, right? So my auditors, who will come every year, if they provide guidance that this is now something that you need to do, right? Which is to say, hey, all right, city, how did you spend that public safety money? Right now, there's no guidance on that. I'll be pretty surprised if there isn't at some point. I'll be pretty surprised on that.
And there's
And
no
we need to be able to account for it, show that we segregate it, show that we spent it based on statute.
And there's no sunset time on that when it just goes away, we don't have to do it in a year or 2 years, or,
Right now, there is no.
okay,
timeline,
well, that
correct.
changes things too,
Yeah.
if it's not a 1-year deal,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and I think between things like body cameras and the
Yep.
associated servers,
I think just
The
body
ra-
cameras was
radio- I mean, just-
87? Is it 100, yeah.
yeah,
Which
just
is crazy.
radios are the same deal. It's,
And they outdate them on
Bonkers.
purpose, and there's
Find
gotta
out.
be something more we can do on that, it's costing taxpayers a lot of money every year to,
I have no idea how to get around planned obsolescence, but I don't disagree. I have no idea how to get around that, but
and they know that, that's why they keep changing it. Money, money, money.
yeah,
I mean, is there any other company other than Motorola for that type of stuff?
Well, the radio thing is not necessarily that, it's actually FBI encryption for their CGIS data. There's a lot of other CGIS data things that, me and the mayor talked about as far as changes with, who can be in a police car and listen to a radio or see it boils down to that same change that the FBI put on, that they wanted encrypted radio, so that's the radio piece. Different than the body camera,
Right.
you're on board with the body camera piece, yes.
Okay,
point is, I think we won't have a problem identifying expenditures that in the
Okay.
end are going to be a benefit to our residents. It's about what is it gonna be and in what year is it gonna be. But any of those expenditures, whether it's radios, all right, great, it's needed, it's required, and now that's,
takes it out of capital improvement.
$90,000 or whatever they are right now, that I don't have to levy directly to pay for.
How far out do they, so if you budgeted a squad car, for example, 5 years out, would that be considered, if we bought that car early, let's say, would that be considered a budgeted item?
Mayor Gordon and I discussed this a little bit, and some of it's gonna be is that we're gonna need to actually sit down and plan out some of this stuff. I don't know if we're really gonna be able to sort it out today, but I will say this, is that for most cities, they are not doing what we do. Very, very few, right? For most cities, a budgeted item, and I think probably for most state legislators, their understanding of a budgeted item is, what did we approve in the 2024 budget? Because that's what most cities do. Most cities, their capital plan is a list of things that then they're going to bond for whenever they decide to do it.
dumb.
But that is I mean, that's not just the majority, that's the vast overwhelming majority for that. That's the plan. So I think most legislators probably are not saying, oh, no, you had that, you were on top of your game, you had that scheduled for 2031, and I know it. I don't think that's really how that's gonna work, but I do think we need to give some very serious consideration to how to spend that. We've also got a new PD building that does need some stuff still. Travis has done a great job getting surplus desks and chairs and things like that for pennies on the dollar, but that's not the full of what he needs to be able to fully operate out of there and get out of the fire department building.
Well, I think you've done a great job, Mike. It's hard to believe that we haven't had a tax rate in the 40s in the last 15 years. I'm curious to see if how many years back you'd have to go to even see a tax rate in the 40s. And the council's done a great job keeping the tax rate down. Thanks.
I'd like to see us be debt-free by 2031, and I think that in a very similar timeline, I think we can probably hit 40 or less on the tax rate. I don't really see that as anything that's insurmountable. But we gotta stick to our three main goals and keep plugging along, 1 year at a time.
Yeah, that debt is haunting us. It's gonna haunt us.
You know, that's a
8 years,
that
killing
is
me.
one fun part on this, is 2023 is the last year for that 932, that 2014 B bonds. That's the last year of the levy that's, I mean, currently, right? And then, starting in 2024, we only have one bond issue that relies on tax dollars. And then that's gonna run out for a while still, but to be down to one, that's very good. And I think by the time we get to 2030, 2031, so I think it's September of 2030, I think, if I remember right, is the last payment date. I really do think we will be the largest city in the state that is levy debt-free.
So is this no fund balance contribution number, is that also pushing out? I know we had talked about paying off that other bond faster. Does this number also include pushing that back to the more standard payoff schedule? Or is that still pay it off
Is this
sooner?
the tax abatement bond that we refunded, or liquor store?
The liquor store?
So liquor store would be paid for with liquor store revenues. That's never
That's
gonna
it.
be associated with tax
Okay.
dollars. Enterprise funds, whether it's water, sewer, storm, or liquor,
Yeah.
they are enterprise funds because they do not take tax dollars. They operate as a business, and you ought not be passing tax dollars in. Perfectly fine to pull dollars out to lower taxes, but it should never go the other way.
Okay, I'm just thinking
Change that
if-
you're asking about is the liquor store, because we were trying to pay it off early.
to save some money,
But
which is
when we
16.
looked at it, it was like 16,000 a year for the 6 years that we were saving. Well, it made more sense to, instead of just trying to save that, just using those funds to help offset so we're transferring more profit out of the liquor store into,
So remember, in the bond issue you are not allowed to pay it off until year 7.
Okay,
And by then, it's just like a home mortgage. Once you've paid off half the mortgage, you paid off
Most of the
way
interest.
more than half the interest.
Right.
It gets to be the problem.
so
and you
with,
classify that type of a bond differently because it's enterprise, it's a business, so normally the city wouldn't be in business. So when Mike's talking levy bonding, I mean, he's
And-
talking about actual tax dollars going to pay for
Right.
debt. Whereas that's, the business is covering servicing the debt, and then it's, by not paying it off early, we're able to use that money that we're the more of the profit that we're moving over to help lower taxes now, which is, I think, what the people that actually invested the money to take the risk of moving the store, they should see the benefit now instead of down the road, you know what I mean?
so with the liquor store payoff, the minimum amount of time is 7 years, correct? What are we budgeted for now to pay it? When are we budgeted for now to pay it off, roughly?
Right now, we are just moving forward with, we'll follow the debt service schedule. And the point will be is that we get to year 7, maybe it's year 8, whatever, is, all right, here's the payoff amount, here's how much cash we have in the liquor fund, not somewhere else, but in the liquor fund. And then it's, do you want to do it or not?
Okay.
Now, to the extent that in this budget, and probably will now be in future budgets, we have upped the transfer out of the liquor fund to help keep taxes low, that paying it off early is probably less likely. But
Yeah, I don't
there-
want that. I want to be able to pay it off early because debt costs us money.
Yep, but then there's that offset of real people benefiting today. And, which side of the scale is heavier that's a council decision. It's not really for me, that's more of I tell you the numbers and you guys tell me which side of the scale is heavier.
Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, that was, the argument is always that, okay, well, why wouldn't I want to benefit now if I'm the one that took the risk? I mean, it could have been a disaster when they moved the store too, and it wasn't. So we should get the benefit now, and you're gonna have more population. I mean, we're talking about, even at the earliest payoff, we're talking about 2029, all right? That's the earliest, I think,
2028, I think.
2028. So we're talking about.
Something like that.
It was December of 28, something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I think at that point, we were gonna save, what, $161,000 of interest?
Total, we would save like 118 or 100.
Which is still, I mean, that's
It is,
$120,000.
but you're talking about spreading that out over more time, and you're gonna have residents that don't even live here now that will be helping to pay for that, and you're able to save residents that live here today that took the risk tax dollars now, you know what I mean?
I guess I just see it as a rich banker sitting on the shore drinking his margaritas, making money off the residents for having to pay a loan longer. That's what happens with mortgages. You pay this mortgage.
No, I mean, I
and
don't
you're-
disagree
you're-
that it
You're
would be
paying
better
a
to
lot of
pay it
money
off
for a
sooner,
banker
but-
to sit and just make money off of the imaginary money. So I mean, debt it's a killer to most households that get into debt, they never get out of it. It's the same thing. I'd rather see us out of the debt sooner. So if we have to pull, 16,000 less from the liquor store fund to pay off the liquor store bond or pay it off faster, I'd rather get rid of all that debt because, I mean, even $18,000 a year is still a lot of money. I mean, that's something that we could work
What
with.
he's pointing out there is on that is the implicit savings on the interest that.
Right.
Right, but to pay it off is gonna require well over $1 million.
Right.
I mean,
But I'm
it's-
saying I want to pay it off at the minimum, or the soonest we possibly can. So I would like to see us budgeted for it at the 7-year payout, no matter what. I don't want to push it back because it all costs money.
Yep.
Okay. That's something I guess we can adjust later, but that's really important. Something that I had a huge goal on is paying off debt because I've seen debt ruin city after city, and this one, it's hurt us too. So,
To clarify, how many years until the liquor store is paid off at the rate we're doing right now?
It's 15-year bonds, and they would issue was
2030,
March of '21,
February 2030.
yeah, so.
I'd rather pay it off in 7 than 15, saves money.
Well, yeah,
Keeps some money,
be-
yeah, I get
That's
what you're
my,
saying
my
though.
point is that you're gonna have, I mean, how many more residents are you going to have at that time that will help contribute to paying that off? So it's not,
It depends if the economy tanks and people aren't moving. That could happen too.
well, that could happen, but I
Yeah.
mean, you're talking about 7 years from now, you're gonna have a whole lot of people that don't even live here now that will help contribute to paying for that. And from 2029 or 2028 to whatever the payoff is, there's a whole bunch more residents that'll help
Well,
pay for it.
And let's not forget that at the liquor store, like, the reason a new liquor store worked is because we had no excess demand in Isani. Everybody in Isani was already drinking all they cared to drink and buy all they cared to buy. That moving wasn't going to help that unless you move east to 65 and gather northbound traffic. All of our increase has been substantively. Some of it is new people moving in, but substantively for us to be going up nearly twofold since 2018, that's northbound traffic. That's people that don't live here
And
coming,
more selection, too.
giving us their money so that we can lower our taxes.
Yeah.
I mean, I like free money, but I like that kind of money too.
Could be siphoning a lot of people out of
And
Cambridge, too,
and so then, the ability for us to pay it off early is going to be largely informed by how successful are we pulling northbound traffic.
Okay.
And believe you me, Keith hears about it regularly from me. Like, every time I think that's not his primary focus, I remind him that that is your primary focus, even if you thought it wasn't. Like, northbound traffic, northbound traffic, northbound traffic. So,
So back to my question, the no fund balance contribution 2024 on the far right, what is is that with the 15-year payout on that bond with the liquor store transfers, or
yeah, right now,
is that not really,
there is nothing uniquely planned
okay,
in order to pull off paying the bonds early. It will be entirely dependent on how much we transfer on any given year out of the liquor fund and how successful liquor fund is going forward, right? If we continue to see sales at 10%, even after, I mean, literally, we are in very short order here going to be at double what we were when we hatched this scheme at the old liquor store. That's remarkable. The market rate study said we were going to do 1.5 times. We were going to go from 3 million to 4.5 million. It would take 3 years. We clear sailed way past that before we even had a full year in the books. So that's really how it's going to be. Is how does it pan out? If we're really good at pulling in northbound traffic, pulling in that additional revenue, and growing those sales by 10%, yeah, there probably will be. I mean, right now, to be honest, I'm very surprised that we are sitting on nearly $1 million in the liquor fund. I really didn't. I mean, I knew the new store would work, even though it seemed risky. I knew it would work. I wasn't prepared to let myself believe it would work this well. So,
How long were those billboards, how long have they been up? Catching northbound traffic?
Where were you in,
Been a long time now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Probably
been,
8
I don't,
months maybe.
the prime one, the one that we're actually gonna keep long-term, that one's been less than a year. But we had one up maybe 5 months prior to that, that was further down, but it was a
Call back
lot
Coop- by
closer
Cooper's
toward,
Corner.
Cooper's Corner.
Yeah, yep,
That, we felt like it was a little too far.
I agree.
Like, I really was preferring a billboard that is exactly 1/4 or 1/2 mile before our turn. And of course, I'd still love a sign, any sign on that corner saying, turn here now, even if it's beer, arrow, whatever, something.
So, and that was in the, how was that budgeted for, that sign that we'd wanted? I know it was taken out last year. Is that something that we could, instead of, I mean, I
Right.
like to see this drop in the tax rate, but could we finagle that back in and still keep the tax rate around, you know, a 13% drop versus the 15% and maybe get the sign that you want?
Well, where we're at with that is that we had originally started going to the property owner, and they said, oh, yeah, we'll work with you, we'll come up with something. Then we realized that the state had right away on that corner that they gave up, turned it to the county. The county was like, we don't want it. And we've been trying to get the county to sign it over to us for quite some time. And that's literally the thing that we're waiting on
We're
at this
currently
point.
working on the legal documents for taking action to acquire that.
Okay, so
So if
would
we
it,
It's in works.
would it be smart to budget for it? I mean, right now, we're deciding next year's budget.
Yeah, and for the liquor, if that is a sign that is for the liquor store, that is in the liquor fund and ends up having nothing to do with tax dollars at all. And at this point,
But that would delay the payoff on the bond, too, if you're taking money out of that.
yeah, but we can't take tax dollars in to the
But-
liquor fund.
But we can lower the contribution from the liquor store to our fund, to our general fund, correct? So we could
That
say,
is the council's prerogative. At this point on the sign, you know, at one time it sounded great to have a digital sign. At this point, I'm literally,
anything.
black and white beer sign, fine. Like,
Yeah.
it can be on plywood.
Bunch of
let's
wall
just-
drugs.
I know that's not popular among everybody else, but I want a sign. I just
cannot
want a
be.
sign, and I don't need to spend, you know.
I guess I would like to see less taken from the liquor store. Less, or, I would like to see the ability to have the sign or to pay off the liquor store bond earlier. So if we keep the tax rate lowering, you know, down at like 13 or 14% and diminish the transfer from the liquor store into the general fund, I think that would be beneficial towards long-term success of the liquor store and paying off the bond, if that makes sense. I mean, I know it's not specifically laid out here, but
I'm definitely for the no fund balance. We're that much closer to getting into that 30% range, which we should be in. It'll make it a lot easier next year, the year after, to really fight to get into that 30% range.
And Luke, there's nothing that says we can't pay it off at that time either. I mean,
Yeah.
what Mike is saying is you said $1 million in that fund right now? I mean.
As I'm
it's just in the
reconciling
bank,
my past
basically,
months,
so-
we're
I mean,
fast approaching that, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if it continues the way it is, I mean, there may be more money there that we could pay it off early still, you know, it's nothing saying that we couldn't, it's just saying that, you know, I mean, that's it, that's it. If it continues to do well, it still could be paid off at
The
that
insight
time.
I could give you, and this is anecdotal, and it's not, you know, it's not in a spreadsheet, but I would say this, is that when we opened that store and dropped $750,000 on additional inventory, and, I mean, I capped out at the old store at like 325, that was all I could possibly even fit in the building. When I spent that much money, and we had that building new, I was sure it would work, but it was a little uncomfortable. And if you had told me at that moment that, oh yeah, when you in 2023 December, you're going to be sitting on $1 million, and you will have already upped your transfer to the general fund, yeah, I would 100% take that. 100%
That's my
take
point too,
that.
is it's the residents, they didn't know what was going on because they weren't necessarily doing it, but that same feeling that Mike had, I mean, they're the ones that actually took the risk. You were worried because that was who we had to answer to, you know, I mean, that's,
Yeah.
so they should reap the benefits of that risk-taking now, you know? And when you're talking, I mean, what's 16,000, I mean, we see a population growth of, what do we figure, normally 2% a year is conservative, or was
We've,
it
2% is pretty
2%
conservative.
year over
roughly
year?
$2 a resident per year is what that's
At
gonna,
16,000?
yeah. If we're at 7,000 residents now, that's $2.30 per resident per year. That's what $16,000 comes down to. I mean, it's not a lot, but
Well, and then there's the issue of it's not
But then
even,
we're-
it's only, you can only divvy it, you can only understand a way to divvy it up by parcel. That's, you know, so it's,
Right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
we're saving them more than that, yeah. And you're letting the residents that will live here in the future contribute to paying for it.
and if we get,
I
and if we
just
get,
hate debt.
and if we get, I agree, and that's why we have a plan to otherwise
Yeah.
be levy debt free. And after that, I mean, once we get this levy, liquor store debt paid, whether it's early or on time, whatever it is, after that, the only other debt we have scheduled is for a wastewater treatment plant. Right? And that, again, that's enterprise fund, and, you know, we've talked about that, that's a gigantic dollar amount, probably gonna be in the $24 million range, and asking, saying, all right, we wanna pay cash because we don't wanna be in debt, asking the 20 years of residents that have lived there prior to 2040 to have foot that entire bill, some of whom will not be there the day that it opens. Philosophically, that doesn't feel quite right, which is why we've kind of queued this up as 1/3 cash, 1/3 grant, state or federal grant money, and 1/3 bond issue, so that the 20 years of, the residents live here 20 years prior have paid their fair share, and the residents who have lived here 20 years after it opens in 2040 have paid a fair share. It is at least more equitable than saying, all right, you guys, fork over your 24 million. Like,
But still, that's roughly like $3 million in interest that the city is gonna burden
Oh,
on that
agreed.
1/3. So, I mean. you-
agreed, and I'm not making the case that it's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm making the case that it's more equitable. It's just
Sure.
better. It's not, definitely not perfect, but better. Yeah, gathering up 24
Now you're
million.
talking about something that is infrastructure that's spanning generations.
Right,
So,
understand that.
what-
Yeah,
I
and
mean,
so,
that's-
yeah, in
and
the
that's sort of
timeline-
the same point that I'm making too.
In the
is-
timeline,
yeah.
you figure that you build that and you have 40 years, 20 years to pay off the one you just did, and now you start saving for that next one, right? 20 years to start saving for the next one, so, but.
So
other than that-
are we saving for that now? Is that?
Oh, yeah.
We are, okay, and how much a year is roughly going into that, do you know?
We don't delineate in that fashion.
Okay.
Right? All our capital is aggregate, and we run a balance at the bottom. And I either have enough when I get to 2040 or I don't. But what you would identify in any one year as having gone toward that project, it's like fund accounting. You can make it look like whatever you want.
Okay. Would it be beneficial to, say, instead of dropping it as much as we are, to take 40,000 or 50,000 and bookmark it for that? Or, I mean, just to try and, over the next 20 years, sort of build up and maybe cut the amount of interest we pay in half on needing a smaller loan later. So if we, say if our city portion is gonna be 8 million and we save up 4 million in the next 20 years, so we only have a $4 million loan, so we have to pay half as much interest. Is that something that we could budget for now? I mean, we're looking at 20 years down the road.
The appropriate time for that is when we do the rate study, which
Okay.
we're waiting on a well study. Then we're gonna have to get into the rate study. The primary topic there is definitely gonna be water. But at the same time, we will do sewer rate study at the same time. And that will be the moment where we say, this is how we want future plans to go. That'll be and that will be this year.
Okay.
We gotta get through that, but I probably have to get through my audit, so we're probably talking springtime, but, yeah, yep.
So how do we
I'm just,
get to a conclusion on this? Do we just throw out a couple scenarios?
We can,
I'm worried
we
that
can
15's
vote-
too much.
why?
Just because he's always talking about he doesn't want big ups and downs, and I think there's gonna be a
Well,
a
remember
recession
though,
hitting and-
he said that, but he also said, if you do make a decrease, that you can maintain it.
Right, but
which
what
is
happens if,
exactly what we're doing.
what happens if a recession hits or the housing market crashes, then next year we have less taxable values, so we're gonna get less in, so we're gonna have to raise the tax rate, and everybody's gonna have to pay more in taxes. That's kinda why you have a fund balance to cushion those things. I think the fund balance is really important to set you up, you know, make you risk averse as a city. What if, like I said, the housing values crash a year or two from now and we get less taxable money? So then we're gonna be in a situation where we don't have enough money, so we're gonna have to hike up the taxes. And that's, to me, I think it's
Well, even if you
it's a
looked
little bit
at,
too aggressive.
we looked at that, and we talked about that today. Even if you look at like 2006, 2007, I mean, they don't actually realize an increase in the levy, or not in the levy, but in the tax rate for like another 5 years or so after that. So, I mean, you've got, you know, they're making the rounds every 5 years. I mean, every year they readjust your value on your home, but they're actually taking it and every 5 years doing a real deep study on that house or whatever, right? So you don't really see that happen like overnight, you know what I mean? It's
Right.
delayed, and so when you have that delay, you've got time to adjust, right? So there's always time to adjust, but I mean, yeah, I mean, if the worst case scenario were to happen or something, but I mean, what do you see that would be even comparable to that situation? And that one was really, I mean, not all that horrible looking when you went back and look at it, because I did ask about that when we were talking today, and it's just, it's not something that you cannot adjust for if the time were to come. You're gonna have time, because remember, even for next year, they're looking at the value of these homes, like what, January?
Yeah, basically the values that we're talking about today were essentially set January 2nd of last
So,
year.
yeah, I mean, if you plan on the value going down, you know, a huge amount in the next few weeks, well, yeah, that may be a problem, but that's not gonna happen, you know what I mean? So, yeah, I mean, you'd have time to adjust, and like I said, we've got something, you know, potentially coming up, the sale of a property here in this next meeting that would contribute 158. And you've got the history year over year of where you're seeing, you know, like I said, you had an extra 200 and, let's see where my notes are here, but an extra 244,000 in 2022 that was a surplus on the budget, so you have, you know, 2021 was 200, or was 120,000 extra, 2020 was 175, so you're still, I mean, let's say you even get, you know, 100,000, then you're still contributing $258,000 to the general fund, or to the fund balance, so I mean, and with the increase in market value to really reach the goal of what we were trying to reach, I mean, just about every house that we looked at on that southwest side was around a 14% increase. So if we want to make sure that we're keeping the actual dollar amount that they're saying either the same or less, we need to be at that rate. And I think doing that, you're still saving for a rainy day. Just because it doesn't show it there, I mean, we've got other things that
Yeah, I
like, you know what I
understand.
mean? So,
I don't know, it just kind of scares me.
So,
I'm risk averse with money, and it's,
Yeah, I mean, every council member got to vote their conscience on that. It's probably worth clarifying here just so everybody, I talked to Mayor Gordon about this. We have 4 resolutions that we need to go through. They can be addressed one at a time, or I should say one at a time in the order listed, to mitigate any risk that we find ourselves up on something. Or we could just say all 4 of them. And to the extent that the resolutions in the packet do not necessarily match what's on the screens, if a council member wants to say, I would motion to approve the 4 budget resolutions using scenario, you know, 0 levy increase, or no fund balance contribution, or updated market value, which would be, you know, kind of your 3 options, right, that are sitting on the screen, we will simply move forward with that. As staff, we understand very clearly, and so long as I'm confident that all of the council members understand what has been voted for, that's my single great fear, is that we talk so much that one council member thinks we voted for this and the rest think this. That, can't have that, but we are prepared to just go ahead right away with any of those scenarios. If we're gonna have another scenario, depending what is offered or improved, we might need to take a recess just to clarify that we're getting the numbers correct, but.
so I'll go ahead and make a motion for the no fund balance contribution.
I'll second.
So I have a motion from myself for the no fund balance contribution, and a second from, and this would be to approve all, sorry, I should clarify that, this is for all of the listed items there.
All
As-
four
as a-
resolutions updated based on scenario in column AB.
Yep.
Okay.
Let me make sure on that, yeah, yep. So I have a motion from myself and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign.
I,
Motion carries 3-2.
I still think we should have stuck with the updated market value. I just think you get rainy day fund. I preached this more than once, and you talk about something hitting the fan. When it does, what we just did may not have been a very wise choice.
Steve, you voted for these budgets in 2022 with $0 contributed to the fund balance. You voted for 21 at 85,000 contributed, and we just talked about that we're gonna.
Hey,
we-
it's
we-
done. Let's move on to the
would
next
hopefully
subject.
have 158.
I don't need no more lecture. Please, let's move on to the next thing. Plain and simple. Let's,
We'll move on, but I mean, you're the one that
I
wanted to
just
talk about it.
stated my
so-
opinion. That's all I did.
So K2, resolution to consider approving the cannabinoid registration for Thunder Brothers Brewery.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have an application for Thunder Brothers Brewery for cannabinoid registration. They have submitted all the proper documentation, paid the fee, and passed all the requirements that city has per city code. The applicant is here if you have any questions. Staff is recommending approval.
I think it's a perfect location for that.
So do I.
I'd make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Heeman and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thanks for coming in, guys. And Mike, I should have said too, I was caught up there, but thank you for all the work that you did on that, so. All right, so K3, cannabinoid registration renewals.
Mayor and Council, we do have 4 renewals for cannabinoid registration for 2024. This is for Minnesota Stores LLC, doing business as Dino Mart Number 2, Isani Smoke Shop Plus, Isani Liquor, and DB Graphics, doing business as the CBD Joint. As per our city code, they are not required to attend for a renewal. They have submitted all the proper documentation and the fee, and staff is recommending approval of these renewals.
Motion to approve all 4.
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
Travis,
Travis?
yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Do you have you had any issues with any of these? Is that what you're gonna
No.
ask?
Yeah, nothing on those permittees or their business adventures with them.
That's my question.
Okay, good.
I'll second.
I have a motion from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Merrill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to K4, an ordinance to amend Chapter 160, the fees.
Mayor and council, annually, we review our chapter City Code 160, which is fees for the city. And the only change was per conversation that we had at Committee of the Whole, which was to amend our fees for park dedication fees. And those will be for, instead of $1,500 per unit, it'll be $1,800, and also $1,800 per commercial industrial acre, and multifamily recreation amenity, with recreation amenities for apartment complexes will receive a 10% reduction of the $1,800 per unit fee.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to K5, an ordinance to amend zoning ordinance subdivision number 536, Article 10, titled Park Dedication.
Mayor and council, so this was discussed at Committee of the Whole and then also at the November 21st Planning Commission meeting. These are those changes in fees, as was just mentioned in Chapter 160, and also some changes in the language to that section. And this is Article 10, Park Dedication of the Zoning Code, Chapter 536, subdivision. And the bulk of the changes here are made to reflect new statute changes, as well as ensuring that the city is not being more restrictive than state statute language, which says the purpose of those park dedication fees and what we can use those on.
Motion to approve.
I'll second it. I have a motion to approve from Councilman Merrill and a second from myself. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the splash pad, splash pad project discussion.
Mayor, we do on this item, we do have for consideration before the council the bathrooms for this project, but also to talk about the project as a whole. I'd like to first start by reading
Yeah.
a statement, if I may.
Yeah, please.
The city staff received an email from Zach Game. He is our Parks and Recreation Board Chair, and he wanted me to share the following with City Council. The City of Isani Parks and Recreation Board has continued to support the creation of the Splash Pad project. Since the conception of the process, the board forwarded several recommendations to the council and has worked hand in hand with city staff to provide a standout park feature that will not only be a benefit to the community, but will provide a centerpiece for economic growth. The city was awarded a $300,000 grant to complete this project, and the remaining balance will be paid entirely through park funds. These are park dedication funds. This feature is exactly why the park funds were created. I encourage the council to continue to support the splash pad plan and move the project forward tonight. Thank you.
So, basically, were you kind of done with the rest of the introduction on that topic, or?
Yeah, I wanted to share that, and then Ms. Hillesheim is going to go through on give the overview of the bathrooms for that project, and I guess it's up to you, Mayor, how you'd like to handle the discussion. If we want to do that first before the bathrooms or following,
Well,
or in conjunction.
let me just say, I mean, first off, on the bathrooms, I mean, it's disappointing that they're so expensive. I mean, I don't disagree with anybody on that, but that's just the reality of the time that we're in as far as cost of construction and that type of thing, that it's gonna be expensive, and it's not something that I wish we could get done cheaper than that, but it is high, but, I don't know, I have a lot to say on this, so, Stephanie, why don't you go ahead and start with your introduction on it, and then I'll kind of address. We've had so much conversation on this and kind of back and forth, and I wanted to kind of address sort of each issue, but go ahead and give us an introduction on it, and then we'll go forward.
The city was awarded a $300,000 grant, as you're aware, from the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Program through legacy funds, requiring a splash pad with at least, I believe, 6 or 7 features, with at least 6 toilets in a restroom. And the city share of the project costs $436,000 in park dedication funds. You decided last time to postpone the bathroom bid, so we were able to do that, but we are running out of time for that as well. The current park dedication fund balance is $487,000, with an anticipated $220,000 more coming into the account with the apartments that have already been platted. The second building on Whiskey Road, and then the 3 additional buildings on Park Brook, which 2 of which right now are currently getting ready to come in for their building permits, so it'll be soon to receive those funds. To date, the city has spent $4,000 on architectural fees for the bathroom, $12,596 on engineering fees for the splash park and infrastructure design, and $35,000 on installed electrical upgrades to the park, including the light pole for the playground, which was installed, I believe, last week and works great. So a lot brighter there for our Amp It Up events in the park.
So not all that 35,000 actually went to splash pad?
It
went
was
to other things too?
It was in addition to upgrade the electrical in the park, which was needed for the splash pad as well. So we needed to upgrade electrical service, which
But that'll be good for other amenities down the road as well.
it can be, yeah, more electrical. The city currently is under a signed contract with DW Companies, awarding the bid for the underground infrastructure for the park at a total cost of $213,575, with work expected to begin at the earliest convenience whenever weather allows. And then I've included the clause for cancellation for the contract within the memo. If the council decides not to move forward with the project, the grant would not cover any of the above-mentioned expenses, and the entire $300,000 grant would be forfeited. The city would also be required to return the following donations from local organizations: $5,000 from Federated Co-ops, as well as $5,000 from Memorial Hospital Foundation, as they're both for items that were included within the grant that haven't been constructed at this time. And just for your knowledge, as previously discussed, annual maintenance costs are estimated at $2,000, with the majority of that would be staff time cleaning the water features of mineral deposits and shutting down the winterizing the splash pad. Rubber O-rings or valve diaphragms may be needed after 5 to 7 years, which the cost varies from $15 to $50 each. The splash pad water features are given a 30 to 35-year useful life. If all water features were replaced at one time, it'd be $70,000 in today's dollars. Mike has done research, as he does, on the implications that has on the levy, as well as in the long-range plan. The controller is likely to be the first component to fail around 10 to 15 years. The basic controller proposed costs $3,500. And engineering has stated, though we had a unique situation with the water tower being out of commission this summer due to planned maintenance during a record drought, the amount of water anticipated to be used at the splash pad is minimal. As it's not continuously running, it's button push, so it goes on for 15 minutes at a time in different zones that are being used. And I guess, is there anything else? And then the rest is the bathroom bid information that we went over the last time with our recommendation to award the bid to Versacon for $188,500.
Well, thank you for that information there, and I just wanted to, I was thinking about this today, and we've been going over this and over this and over this for such a long time, and I think I've heard a lot of the different, sticking points and different areas of concern, and I thought, well, let me just kind of get it all out of the way here, and kind of maybe in the interest of time, Steve. I know you're always in the interest of time, right? So anyway, I just wanted to kind of sort of give you my viewpoint on this, and then you guys can kind of hash it out from there. But I just wanted to start by saying first off that, and I'm sure that if there's, people have heard me say this probably every single time we talk about this, and every time I talk about it with residents or anything, is I was absolutely opposed to the splash pad when I was out campaigning and doing things, and I was opposed to the way that we were funding it, and because we were funding it with general fund city tax dollars at that time is what the plan called for, and I did not want to do that. If it was tax dollars, city tax dollars we were using for this, that I had a problem with. Being that it's park dedication funds, I think that's different. That's what those funds are collected for. That's what they're designed for. The grant that we received from the state DNR is actually federal dollars that the state was, received from the federal government. And I mean, Luke and I have had this conversation in particular many times, and I definitely understand your frustration with it, because I wish the federal government didn't spend money on stuff like this. It's silly for them to think that, well, yeah, we're just gonna throw money down here to you guys. I mean, like, if we wanted to do that, we could have found our own money for it, just let folks keep their money, right? So I totally get that argument. But I don't think it's hypocritical to work within the incentive structure that we're provided. That grant money is gonna be spent whether we take it or not. I mean, the federal government's already spent it. They've already doled it out. And if we don't take it, well, then some other city will take it. So it's not like we're gonna save that money for somebody. It's already spent. And as representatives of our residents, we should be trying to bring some of their federal tax dollars back home, and this, I think, is one way that we can do it. So, I mean, our residents are paying some of those tax dollars, and this is a way to actually see a benefit from it. And it's not a great way. It's not money that I wish they would have just let our residents keep their money, but that's not how they've done it. So we've got to kind of work within that structure. This, I don't think, is going to create a burden on our water system or lead to equipment failure or anything like that. I mean, it's not going to be a major contributing factor to whether we need another well or another water tower. It's not that much water usage that you're going to have that issue. I mean, where was Matt? He's not here anymore. But I don't remember what our water usage was, even at the height of that drought last year was, I mean, it's like 1 million a day or something like that. I mean, it's really a lot. Yeah, and then we're talking about, I mean, what was the amount of?
40,000
Is it 40,000?
gallons per day.
And is that assuming that it's, you're only talking about a few months out of the year that it's gonna get used? And you're only talking about on, nice days during that time. If it's raining, obviously, you're not gonna have a whole lot of people out there at the splash pad, and it's a push button, so, that's probably worst-case scenario if that thing is getting pushed all day long, so there will be days where it doesn't use any water too, so I don't know that that's really enough of a concern, and remember too, I mean, we're gonna need those things like the water tower and the new well regardless. I mean, that's just because of the continued growth that we're gonna see, we're gonna need to add that infrastructure. And when I spoke to the DNR, we had that whole discussion about, the DNR sets our limit of how much water we can use, and should we be enforcing the even odd rules and stuff like that? Well, when I called the DNR last summer, after we had had that discussion, I said, okay, so you say we can use 170 million gallons a year, what if we go over that? And he said, well, as long as you're making an effort to try to control the water usage, which we did with our even and odd signs, which I wasn't a fan of having to do, but he said, as long as you're making an effort, there is no penalty, they're not gonna come after us. I mean, it's just, they have people to answer to, and they're trying to set a reasonable limit for our access to the resource, so. But there is no danger that if we go to a splash pad, we're gonna have to pay some huge fine or something like that. And after taking our park tour last week, Jeff was there, I know some of you were working, and Luke, I know you had another meeting, but we looked around at almost every single park we went to, and it was getting dark on us at the end, but we looked at a lot of different options, and, because we wanted to see, okay, what if we're trying to prioritize where this money goes, is there something that's more of a priority than what the splash pad is? And that was, Jeff coming on and being new, I mean, he had some concerns about the splash pad, and, we wanted to make sure that we had time to really take a look, and we'd been talking about doing that with the park board for a long time, and we finally got around to doing it, and I don't know that I saw anything there that was extremely pressing where it needed, a huge overhaul. I mean, there's definitely things that we'll want to get done in the future, but nothing that I thought would take precedence over this project. And so, right now, if you're looking at the amount of park dedication funds that we've got, where you've got the 436, right, that's already kind of dedicated to this project, and then another 220. I mean, you've got $707,000 in park dedication funds that has to be used on some type of park amenity.
I have a question quick, if
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So, what is the average, if you were to look at the last 30 years, what's been the average park dedication funds every year? Does anybody know? I mean, 400, it sounds great, we're getting 200,000 in to replace the 400,000 we're spending, but how long did it take to accrue that $400,000? Was it 30 years, 20 years? I mean, what's the average per year contribution?
So I don't have 30 years of data, but what I can say is that when I got here, 2017, we were... Yeah, I was gonna guess, 75,000 in the hole in that fund. So basically, since then, we've been chalking up an
So
average of like
100,000
100,000 a year.
Okay.
So long as we have good growth, and then especially if we're gonna pick up apartment buildings, that helps even more. But so long as you have good growth and we're putting in developments, it's not hard to stack up park dedication fees pretty quick.
But eventually, we're gonna be out of space to stack up park dedication funds. I mean, if we're developed, then if we become fully developed, then we can't make any more park dedication funds. So,
Well,
I mean, the money gets spent, and it doesn't necessarily always come back right away.
Well, I mean, if you, even if, like, let's say all the land we have available right now gets used up, you're gonna have developers that will come along and they'll buy a piece of property adjacent to the city, and they'll say, can you please annex me in so I can make a development here, you know what I mean? So, yeah, so I mean, that's how you're gonna grow. We won't have to do forced annexation or anything like that, I mean.
Okay, I just wanted to put a quantitative number on that.
Just reiterate with you when you say running out of space. Jeff and I were just talking. A lot of that land east, where the golf course was, even east of that, and plus going out to Station 3, there is land that is part of the city, believe it or not. That whole Booster Merritt farm over there is still part of the city. Yeah, it's huge. There's a lot more development that can go in. And there's still areas that can be developed that are zoned commercial, that we've already had people come in and ask to rezone it, to get it out of commercial so they can build housing on it. That's all development, it's all driven by development. And yes, if you say we're gonna come on hard times, I don't disagree with you. But it's when we come out of hard times, when all that happens big time. Because people have bought in the property cheap, and they wanna roll as many dollars as they can. And when they develop, then they have to put park dedicated fund money in. So it's not, it may not grow in leaps and bounds in the next few years, but within the next 10 years, it's gonna probably blow up more than you think.
Okay, that's fair.
The other point I was gonna make was that you had mentioned, you know, what if the state says, okay, well, it's a really tough time, you know, you have this money here in park dedication, you can use it for other things. Well, I mean, the state has never done that before, so I mean, not to say that they couldn't do it.
Right.
I mean, anything's possible, but it's never happened before, so, you know, are you gonna let that money sit there as a, you know, kind of a backup? Well, it's never been allowed to be used for anything else before, so I don't know that that's, you know, why would you just let it sit there when you could be using it to help improve the town, you know? So, you know, and then when you take a closer look, I mean, we looked at, and I don't know if you guys got that or not, but Mike had put together some information as, you know, over the next 20 years, what's in the budget that we could use park dedications for, because, you know, why wouldn't we wanna, you know, use that money to kinda offset what we'd have to spend out of tax dollars, right? So over the next 20 years, there was $677,140 that Mike had kind of identified as things that we would need to, we could use park dedication funds for. And so, I mean, even right now, you've got, even if we do the splash pad, you're still gonna have another $220,000 in the fund. And, you know, you've got all that time to come up, you know, like you just asked about, how much do we get per year on average? You're still gonna cover all that stuff, you know what I mean? So that's one part of it too, is that you've got the money sitting there, and we're not gonna need it necessarily to offset taxes, because we've already got enough to help do some of that, plus we're gonna continue to gain more.
Mayor, I don't wanna interrupt you, but.
Yeah, go ahead.
When he said that we were negative in the park dedication fund, the reason that was is that Legacy Park, it was never told to the council at that time that it was gonna be X amount of dollars, right? We're gonna take park dedicated money, we're gonna build Legacy Park. When it got said and done, we had to take money out of the general fund to cover that, and we were still 75 in the hole. So that was a misconsumer. That, I stood up here and I argued that Legacy Park was not something that should have been done, and I thought I had at least two other council members on my side, but it didn't happen that way. So bear in mind, that's why it was depleted. A park that should have probably never been done for that reason. And I'll stand here beside Mayor Gordon. I was never a big super fan of this, to start with, was I? Never. No, I just never wanted to see it. But I have talked to a lot of people, and there's a lot of people that are in favor of it. Now, I'm not opposed. We got to figure out how we could do this. If we had somebody there working that, and our residents paid $0, but non-residents of the city of Iceni paid a fee to use it, I'm not opposed to that. Because there's a lot of areas that do that.
We could always do that in the future. I put a lot of thought into this, and, you know, the Park and Recreation Board, they've done a lot of work on this, you know, and we have boards for a reason, and, you know, they recommend it. I think it will enhance our city appeal. I think this is a very young city. The average couple are in their lower 30s. There's a lot of kids. There's no water nearby really to go play in other than a Rum River. If I thought one tax dollar was gonna be spent on this, I'd totally be against it. But
And
the
I
way this all
agree.
lined up, it was like the stars were in the favor of doing this. And I think we should go ahead. We've already, I shouldn't say we, because I came on board a little late before this even started, but I think we need to just roll with this. We've already have so much time and money into this. I think it will really enhance our city appeal. I think it will be one more reason for someone to maybe bring their family here, move here. other than the way it all went down, I wish it would have been a lot more smooth. I wish this original plan would have been in place from the get-go, and I don't think there'd be pushback even from us up here on council. And I don't believe there would be pushback from the public that there has been. And I think that the pushback we're hearing from our constituents is more of the ones that don't have kids and can't use it, and I understand that.
Well, and that
And
was
if I
my
thought
reason
they had to
why.
contribute to
Right.
this, I would say no, so.
Absolutely, and that's the difference, is if it was tax dollars, you're 100% right. If that couple that wants to move down to Florida, and they're saving every penny to get ready to go down to be snowbirds, they don't want this, they're gonna go to Florida. So it's not fair to ask them to pay for this, but with it being part dedication funds, they're not contributing to that. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%, and that's why from the beginning, I said, I don't want any tax dollars going towards this. And so, I mean, you guys know, I mean, I'm a small government kind of guy, and I wouldn't ask you to move forward on this project if I thought there was a more responsible way to use these funds, or a different way that we could use them, but just the way that everything is structured, and the way that we are allowed to use these funds, and the grant money that we have coming, I mean, I just can't find a better way to go about it, and I don't see any other project that we could use this money for that has more of a precedence or is more important than something like this. And not to mention that we've already spent, $50,000 on it besides, so.
Can I?
Yeah, I'm
make
done,
a
so yeah, go ahead.
Suggestion is, if for any reason this thing runs over budget, something none of us expected or seen, then I'm with council member down there that we should then at that point charge a fee till that money's paid back, if for any reason this thing runs over budget.
Now, bear in mind, I said I would donate doing the
I
work,
know.
and I'm gonna donate the drain, waste, and vent piping. I'm working on the company I work for to donate the plumbing fixtures. Worst case scenario, the city would have to buy the fixtures at cost, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than any of you would be able to get them for, because I would go to the wholesaler and get it written up to the city, and I'm sure the city even has an account with those wholesalers. So that is worst case scenario, that they have to pay for the fixtures. I'm sorry, I can't pay for them. But I will do the work, I will put it all in, and I'll pay for the drain, waste, and vent and water piping in it. But the rest of the fixtures, I'm working on my company to donate them. I can't promise it. I've had a few conversations with them. But worst case scenario, the city would have to pay for the fixtures.
And you're saying in the bathrooms?
Yeah, the bathrooms, yes.
So, I mean, that number that we've given, you would potentially be able to bring that down, and I don't know if I've said that, I mean, I think I have, but I mean, for you to offer that is very much appreciated, I mean, that's,
Mayor and council, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just to clarify, the number that they bid on does not include the plumbing.
oh, okay, all right.
Sorry.
And that's why I said that the bid
Okay.
was too high, not including the
Yeah,
plumbing.
it's high, I mean, I
It's
don't disagree with you.
50,000 high.
But I mean, we also got how many bids on it, and it was the lowest one, I mean, that's just the reality of the times that we're in, but I don't disagree with you, it's
I guess
crazy, but.
we're all kind of stating our opinions. I think you guys know my opinion, but I just think it's wasteful, and I think it's a bad look for us. I get it, the funding works out nice, but at the same time, I mean,
What would you do with that money what would you rather see done with that money?
I'd rather see the federal government stop wasting money, but that's beyond our scope.
What they do.
That's beyond our scope at the moment, but at the same time, to play into it is kind of like giving them a bravo, thank you, great.
But one thing you also gotta realize, Mr. Becker touched on this. The more amenities you bring into town, the more people you bring into town, more industry you bring into town.
understand.
So it is going to help the city in the long run. It's not a short-term thing. When you start giving amenities to places, to people wanna move to that. I mean, you
I
go down,
understand.
you go down to Bunker, whatever that thing is called down there, that place is packed. They start at 7 o'clock in the morning. They're standing in line.
And I don't disagree with you at all, Luke, on that.
Yep.
I mean, but like I said, we're not in a position to change what they're doing up there. And somebody's going to spend the money, and this is a way for us to bring our residents' taxes that they've paid to the federal
I
government
understand that.
back into town. I don't like it either. I mean, I don't,
I just think from the start, it was horribly planned. I mean, this is why we have these long meetings, because we can talk about things, and now I feel more comfortable that we have talked about a lot more things. Back in the past, it'd be 5-minute meetings, they didn't talk about anything, and it's a bad look when you say, when you just motion to approve, and then all of a sudden, oh, you guys just spent $700,000 without thought? you know, so I think I just like the conversations. Like I said, I'm never gonna vote to approve anything to do with the splash pad because I want nothing to do with it. I think it's wasteful. To me, it's just like greedy and gross, but that's just my opinion.
Well, and I
But it is
get,
what it-
I can respect that, because I
Yeah.
mean, you're standing on principle that
Yep.
you just do not like what the federal government is doing, giving this money out.
And the wasting of the water and
And-
people in the town.
sure.
I mean, I think half of them have this theory that, or have the opinion that it's wasteful, and then the other half thinks it might be okay. So I'm standing for the half that thinks it's wasteful because I think it's wasteful, so.
All right.
I'm still a no, so I'll just leave it short and sweet.
I'll make a motion to approve with the bathrooms and move forward with this project.
I'll second.
I have a motion to approve with the bathrooms from Councilman Lundin and a second from Councilman Heeman. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
All right, that motion carries 3-2.
And just let everybody know, when it comes, I'm still gonna use it. I'm gonna get every dime out of that
Well,
place.
we might as well, yeah.
Well, and the thing is.
And I do have an 8-year-old.
It didn't cost anybody a dime, really. I mean, no tax money as far as our residents go.
I mean, it costs us federal,
Still
it costs
taxpayer
federal
money.
tax dollars.
It's
but I
still
mean,
taxpayer money.
We paid for it.
But it didn't cost us any city tax dollars, you know, I mean, and we can't.
But it will.
We can't control.
But it will.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean,
$2,000 a year is,
min-
it's gonna
$2,000
cost
a
way
year.
more than that for upkeep. You're gonna have a pump go, or something's gonna happen with the concrete slab, you're gonna have to redo it. I mean, $2,000,
I mean, those features are pretty basic. I mean,
then why is
there's,
it so expensive to build in the first place?
well, it's, there again, yeah, it's,
Well, then we'll add a fee. I say add a fee if
yeah, I mean, I would never support charging residents to use it, but I
No, I
mean,
said
No,
our
not
residents,
Right,
but
and-
non-residents, I don't
Right.
say I have a problem with that.
right.
I just keep thinking of the hotel project, all that money that the city gave them, and we were supposed to get access to that pool. Well, then we found out it's $6 a person.
know,
And
there's-
I just went there,
Yeah, you're right.
so.
Yeah, that was bad mayor and council
really
work.
bad.
Yep,
Yeah, that was a horrible decision. and
that was horrible all around.
That was nothing like what we,
At least now we're talking about these things and everybody's aware of every possible situation.
and that
versus
was,
back
that
then.
was just a straight, giving them a grant money, and, yeah,
We could have built 3
unbelievable.
splash pads with that money, 2
And
splash pads
just
with
to,
that money.
there is an apartment building coming into town that has an in-ground pool, it looks like, so.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to K7, the final steps for the water meter change-out project. Do you want me to talk about this, or you want to kind of maybe give us a little overview of
Yeah, I
where
can
we're
just
at?
say
or-
where we're at.
Okay.
So Mayor and Council, we're down to our last 3 remaining residents that need to have the meter changed out. One has a homeowner that was here at council, not that, at the last meeting, and talking at committee of the whole. And then we have 2 vacant houses that need to get their meter changed out. One, I believe, was a house that had burned down, but kind of in process. When it switches hands, eventually that will be when you want to connect your water back up, because right now their water is off. That will be upgrading those meters. So staff is looking for direction on what to do, primarily with the last remaining resident, Sorensen.
Yeah, and the other third vacant one, you said there's just nobody there, and we just haven't been able to get a hold of the owners, or,
Right,
okay.
yep.
We know who the owners are, though, right? Or-
I believe staff was working